Hey everybody, Mary Thomas with Remax Professionals come to you in the area code 775. And today I have my good friend Traci with First Centennial. Traci, who are you?
I am Traci McLeod with First Centennial Title, and I'm happy to be here. I always love to do these videos with Mary. And we're going to talk a little bit about liens today.
We are. So I'm so glad you're here. Honestly, even though I was in real estate, I was like, what exactly does title do? And we've been chatting about that, you guys, for a few weeks now. So we appreciate you coming and joining us. And again, anytime we have a video, you think of questions that we talked about before, or as we talked about today, and you want to get a little more information on that, comment below and we'll make sure to get you the answer to your questions. Last time we were talking a little bit about HOA and different kinds of things, and then we got into a little bit of liens. And today we're going to talk a lot more about liens because there's not just one kind, there's several kinds.
There's several kinds. You have your consensual liens, you have your statutory liens, and you have your judgment liens.
Okay.
And those all can affect when you're going to buy a property or you're going to sell a property. These can all affect the process of transferring that. So let me give you an example. Consensual lien is any lien that you have that you go to buy a car, you sign documentation, you go to buy a house, you sign documentation. So you are saying, I am responsible for this lien, I want to move forward. Okay. Well, that does attach like a deed of trust, which would be if you're purchasing a house, attaches to your property. So that's a lien. You could have a second lien. A car is actually a lien, and depending on how it can attach to your credit. Most don't attach to your property, but they can, depending on different loans that you get. You can get a personal loan that attaches to your property. You can have a mechanics lien. Now, this is something that I think is really interesting. A lot of people think when they're buying brand new, like a new subdivision, oh, this is perfect. Do I really need title insurance? Nothing's happened yet with this property. It's brand new. More than ever, you need title insurance because you now have a builder who is building a lot of different homes, and he has contractors that are doing roofing and electricity. They're doing plumbing. They're doing cabinets. They're doing all kinds of things. So if by chance, usually how it works, as you buy your house, they're paid for that and it moves on. But let's say they're not paid right away. They can actually lien your property, even though you got a loan and even though title's supposed to say it's free and clear. So you really need a title insurance policy to make sure there isn't a mechanics lien. Mechanics liens are put on. They have to do it within 90 days of the work.
Okay.
And they file it. And within that time period, this happens, they need to, after 90 days, renew it, or they need to start getting into a court situation to get paid. Okay. With the title industry as a whole, if there is a mechanics lien, and even if it's still showing up and they've renewed it, because technically there can be some fine lines there, we're going to want to show that that has been taken care of, that they have been paid, because we don't want you to have any kind of issue when that property closes. So mechanics liens can happen, not just in new home sales. You see the dream of your house, Mary's showing that they've done all kinds of great stuff to it.
Make it beautiful.
Yeah, new kitchen, new everything. Well, when we run that title report, let's say Home Depot, they did it themselves, didn't get paid. They could do a lien against that house. So we're going to make sure there is no mechanics liens or anything like that. And we even check, we do the title report, and then right before you close, we do what is called a date down, and we make sure that nothing has been recorded before we close. Okay. If it's after the fact, we've given you clear title without that. And they can't, if it's past that 90 days, they literally should not be able to attach your property. Anybody can file a lien.
That's where I was going.
And so you can just file liens. There's not a law that stops it. So if you do find yourself in that kind of situation, there are steps to take, and reach out to Mary, and I'd be happy to give you all those steps, step by step, to take to make sure that you can prove that this is not a legitimate lien. And so we'd be more than happy to help you, give you those steps in the direction that you need to go. Doesn't happen often, but I have seen people do that, especially some situations where there's divorce and there's different things going on, and people can get lost and a little vindictive.
Sure.
And so that does cause a problem, but it's not that it can't be fixed.
And it could be that way. And then sometimes maybe it's more of a misunderstanding, or we are human. Maybe we didn't send that check off. So a prime example, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong if this is the case or not sure, but you were saying anyone can place a lien. So as an example, you're doing a slight remodel, and you thought you sent that check out and maybe you didn't. Can any contractor, or it doesn't have to be a contractor, it can be just a friend that was helping you paint that day and you had a private little thing, can they go and put a mechanic's lien on your home?
Anybody can actually put a lien. And the beautiful thing is let's say you did forget that check. There are things that do happen that you thought you did and didn't happen. You can do a release of lien once they're paid. Okay. So you make sure if that lien's there, this is how I would do it, that you go down, you have a release of lien, they sign that, you give them the money, and then that gets recorded. And so every time there's a lien, any kind of lien that goes on, whether it's your deed of trust, it's a mechanic's lien, even if there's an easement that has been abandoned, which is not a lien.
Okay.
All those things you have to show. So you have an easement, let's say a right-of-way easement that's now no longer, then an abandonment of that lien needs to be recorded. If you have a mechanic's lien, then a release of the mechanic's lien has to be recorded. If you have a deed of trust, it's called a reconveyance, but that has to be recorded. So it shows that lien was paid in full, and that's how the checks and balances go. Mm-hmm. And we look for those things. Sometimes with not as bad now, but sometimes with a title search, there will show a deed of trust that shouldn't be up against the property, that should have been reconveyed. And we feel strongly that it needs to be reconveyed. So what we do is we search back further and we try to find who held that deed of trust and try to find a way to get to them so we can get that released. Because sometimes, especially back in the day when a lot of the banks were closing and imploding and loans were being sold and this, that, and the other, sometimes things did not get reconveyed properly. So just that's why the title report's there, so we can do it and see it and we can get it released. Because sometimes you know, as a consumer, you don't know all the steps, because this is something we do every day. Yeah. So you think I've made my last payment, everything's great. You go to sell your house, and there's like this, you refinance, and there's also this old deed of trust that should have been paid off. And you're like, wait a minute, that was paid off. So we just have to research back and find that. So it's something to be concerned about, but not too concerned. It's just a flag for us to look forward so we can clear that off the title record.
Everything, it's really just sometimes small little accident. Yes, it has been paid off. And that's why you guys do that. You say, well, this lien came up, let's see this. And you dig into it more, and you're right, it has been paid off. So let's go ahead and remove that lien before it goes to escrow.
And so the title's clear. The one thing that I would say, whether you're paying off your car, whether you're paying off a mechanic's lien, whether you're paying off a loan, a lot of times people get that payoff. Get something in writing when that is your final. Keep your documentation and put it in that special little file, because sometimes, for instance, I've lived in my house for over 20-some years, and we've done refinances, and I keep everything in a little file no matter what it is, because it could be another 10 years before I ever even thought of refinancing, or we thought of selling, or we thought of doing something, and now they're saying this is here. I can go to my little file, I can pull it out and say, no, this is what I have. And this is who it was, so it's easier to connect with them and get that reconveyance done if it wasn't done correctly. So, and a car, if it wasn't paid, didn't show paid off correctly. This was the craziest thing in California when we first moved here 28 years ago. We paid off, it was a loan through Jimco, I don't even know if they're around anymore, for furniture, and we paid it off early. And apparently, even though I had the paperwork that showed it was $201 or something, and that's what I wrote the check for, apparently there was $1 that was needed to be paid.
Oh,
And they never contacted us. They never did anything. And I had a charge off on my credit report, but because I saved that documentation and I had that, they had to remove it.
okay.
So I just say, no matter what it is you're paying off, put that little special file of things that you've paid off, so it's easy to grab and you can go through and find what it is.
Your paid invoices.
Exactly. It's important. It's important because 10 years later,
You might need it.
you might need it and you don't realize that you do. So
What would we do in this situation of if there was a mechanic's lien and maybe you don't want to go back to that person and get them to write off? How would that be? Would that be something like, hey, we leave the check with you if we're in escrow and they can come sign it off there? Or how would we go about that if maybe they don't want to see that?
we could help facilitate that by contacting that person for you
Okay.
with the proper documentation and say, we have the money to pay this and we want you to sign this, and we could help facilitate that. So
Oh, so again, making our life stress-free.
we try. That's what we try to do it for Centennial Titles, to make the transaction go smooth. You also have, I want to talk about judicial liens that can happen. You can have an IRS lien, you can have a bankruptcy lien. All these are red flags if they show up. But it doesn't necessarily also mean that this is the end of the line. It just means that we have to look further, and it's always case by case.
Okay.
And see what it is that we need to do to have that removed. Child support, you'll see on your prelim if you're buying something or selling something. If you've gone through the courts for child support, it's going to always show as a lien on the prelim. And I just want to let you guys know that doesn't mean you haven't paid. Some people see that and they're like, wait a minute, I've paid all my child support. Absolutely.
We start having a heart attack.
Right.
Because you're like, what happened?
It's scary, yeah. And you know you've been paying it, and you're thinking, what is going on? It just shows as a lien, and as an escrow company, we have to reach out and make sure everything's paid.
Right.
And that's what we do. So it's just like we do a little demand. It says everything's paid in full, and then it just goes on. But that's just their check and balance to try to make sure that somebody is not getting a chunk of change and not paying their child support. So the IRS liens, we close a lot of deals with IRS liens, and to be quite honest, they will work with you. You may not have all the money, or you may need a portion for this or that. It's on a case by case. It depends on your situation and what has gone down, but we do help with facilitating and finding out, like, we have this amount of money. Are we able to go ahead and close this and remove it? Because what will happen is judicial things can stay on a property. And like if you buy a property without title insurance, and just this week, we had somebody that did not want title insurance, and they were from back east, and they do closings a little bit different. They have attorneys, and it's a whole different scenario. Well, when you open with us and we get an O&A from your realtor, we start a search right away. And this guy said, I don't need title insurance and this, that, and the other. And we were trying to explain to him why we felt that he did, because it really is one of the biggest purchases that you're going to do. And for a very little amount of protection, it can make a world of difference. So as it turned out, he didn't want it. We haven't closed yet, but we had already done the prelim. And there was a judgment against that property that he did not know, and that judgment would have stuck with that property.
Okay.
So now we're working, now he wants title insurance, and we're working to see if we can have that judgment removed, and we're moving forward. But
I was like him though, honestly. Before I knew I knew that, you know, when you guys are in contract, the seller, when they're transferring it, pays for the title insurance, and that's from before you bought it backwards. And so I was like, why would you need title insurance, you know, for the future? But going over certain things, you've really shown me, like, and that's why I love when you come and teach us all these fun things that really are huge and can affect us immensely. Just like you said, a handful of things that really do come into play quite a bit. There's a lot on there, 80 some or something like that.
right.
But for 10% of the home's purchase price to protect you from the time you bought it forward, just in case, makes a huge
It's huge.
difference.
I mean, the biggest one for that extended policy, it's 10%, like she said, more. But forgery is one of the biggest things that hit our industry. Fraud, all that different stuff. There's so much. It's not just
Unfortunately.
not just the real estate industry. in our country as a whole, people stealing identities, people doing stuff. And one thing that can happen easily is after you're closed, and unfortunately this has happened, I've had a few experiences with it, where somebody had, I shouldn't say a child, they were a young adult, but had a drug problem, and they actually took out a second against their property,
Oh,
and wasn't discovered for 90 days when they started getting this late notice and that they were going to start a process for not getting payment, what had happened. An extended policy, whether it's somebody that steals your mail and does that, because lots of things happen, you pick up the phone and you call us, and we step in and we work on getting it cleared up for you. So it has so many coverages to it, but that for me is worth the 10%, just because every day on the news you hear about these fraudulent things happening, and it's just peace of mind. You don't want your place, that you live and you love, to be in any kind of danger of losing it and taking it away, or
Absolutely.
to have this huge debt that you now have to pay that you didn't sign.
Right. Well, walk us through that, because when you say took out a second, we kind of know, a little bit about what that is. But before, how does that even happen? Like, if you're thinking like how I used to, I have one loan. What is a second? How does that affect my property? And
A second can be put up against a property. So what a bank will look at, personal loan, whatever it is, or second that attaches to your property, they will look and they want to make sure you have enough equity to do that. So let's say your property's gone up in value, and you now have a 60% loan to value on your first, and now you can take another 20 or 30,000 out and still be at that 80%. The bank decides to do that. Now, people steal identity all the time. People walk in, they could steal my identity has been stolen, actually. Unfortunately, I don't know too many people where that hasn't happened. Unfortunately, there's a huge percent.
right.
And so somebody could walk in, you can get a license here in the state of Nevada. Unfortunately, I know this because I went to a fraud class, which just scared me to death.
Oh my
I wish
gosh,
I had never gone.
We're trying not to scare you, but sometimes life's scary.
You can go get easily underground an ID, and somebody could go in, say their name. If they've stolen all the right information, now they're running and they're taking out loans, or they're taking out things, and I don't discover it until it starts to go into default.
Right.
And sometimes you don't discover it because you could have multiple properties and they have it being sent to a rental property. So it could even take longer. So it just depends on what's going on, and not to scare you,
Right.
just to say that these little insurance things, and especially with title, it's a one-time fee. It's not like you have to pay it every year or do that. It's a one-time fee when you purchase. And I think as buyers, you get confused sometimes because there's a buyer's policy and there is an owner's policy. The buyer's policy, or called the lender's policy, is for the loan. So if something goes wrong, the lender is requiring that because they want to be made whole. They want to be sure they don't lose any money. It has no protections for you as a buyer.
Okay.
And so if you hear it's a buyer's policy, that makes me think, oh, that's
I'm good to
protecting
go.
me. Yeah, that's protecting me. Why would I pay two of these?
Yeah.
So the owner's policy is what protects you.
Okay.
And so
And the buyer's policy is
It's
protecting the lender
it's
in case
protecting the
anything happens and you need, you can't pay on that anymore, and it protects the lender.
it protects the lender. So
Oh, okay. Well, they need protection too, but you want protection for yourself as well.
and I think that that's our goal. I think in any transaction is to make sure that it goes smooth, and that's protecting the people that are buying, it's protecting the people that are selling, it's protecting the agents, all of us involved, so we all know that snapshot of the property is free and clear and good to pass the title on. So
To the very next one.
yes.
I love that idea. So we talked about a few things, you guys, and if you would love more information on liens, how would they get a hold of you if they had questions, or if they think maybe something came up, or they want to check and make sure they don't before they go on the market? Is this something they can do beforehand?
There is, if you are listing your property with Mary or listing your property, and you want to get a what we call a prelim or snapshot of your property, and you feel like there's something going on, like maybe there's been a death, Maybe there's been certain things that you're not, you think there could be a lien, or you're not sure something was paid off. That is something that you could call and we would start working on searching that, so we could maybe get anything that came out fixed before that property actually sells. So it just makes that process smoother.
A little smoother and not a heart attack while you're in the middle. And sometimes maybe it prolongs the close of escrow a little bit till it
Depending on what it is, yeah.
Okay.
Especially if there's if there has been a probate, somebody has died without a trust and a will, and there's things going on. Well, even with a will, it would be a probate. That doesn't mean that it's bad, but call us, because we can know exactly, depending on where it is in the process, the timelines. It could take, we could say that might take 90 days, or it's already here. So now we have to do is just petition the court, and they can let us decide that might not take hardly any more time.
Right.
So it's just letting us know up front. We're here to try to help and facilitate that. And any questions that you may have, you can reach me at 775. Any questions you might have, you can reach me at 775-230-0421. 775-230-0421. Again, I'm Tracy McLeod, and I would love to help.
And if there's anything I can do for you regarding real estate, reach out anytime, you guys. 775-682-1973. Till next time.
Have a great day.